Our engineer over there, Gavin Doherty, making sure that we're live and everything's working good. And
I'm alive and working good.
All right. We'll take this time to thank our sponsors, but we don't have any. So, yeah, let's just keep going. Anyways, usually we talk a lot about corgis, and we're going to talk about corgis today. But we're going to talk a lot more about our breeder here, Suzanne. She's gone through a lot lately, and we're going to tell you a little bit about her. So, you ready, Suzi?
Yep.
Okay. I guess we're going to start back. Were you 10 years old or 9 years old when you first got diabetes?
I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 10 years old.
10 years old?
And type 1 and type 2 diabetes are actually very different creatures. I don't know how people can handle the type 2 because they still produce some insulin. And I don't know enough about it. But from the day I was diagnosed, produced no insulin. So I didn't have any interference with trying to figure out how much to take and when more insulin was going to kick in, or it was
pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
You took so many units for so many grams of carbs or whatever, right?
Things were different back then because we didn't have the things we have now. We didn't even have home blood glucose testing when I was diagnosed. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but yeah, they didn't have home blood glucose testing until a little bit after I had it. So
what'd you do? How did you test?
I had to go into the lab and get my blood drawn, and we did urine testing. And I have to say, when I was diagnosed, I think I was really sick. I was very, very sick. We had gone up to Bishop and we were on a family trip, fishing and having a good time. And I just got really, really sick. There's a picture of me holding a fish, and I look like a Holocaust victim. I'm super skinny, and I have my hair in a ponytail, and I just look horrible. And one of our friends was a nurse, and she's told my mom, you might want to get her checked for diabetes. So we left early. We came back, and I was diagnosed with diabetes. Now, what I remember hearing is at 10 years old, I was lying in the bed and I was so sick. I thought I had never heard of diabetes, and I thought they said, we think she's going to die. I think they probably said, we think she has diabetes, but I thought we think she's going to die. And I actually was like, then this will be over because it was really bad. My blood sugar was ridiculously high.
You left the vacation because of you, because you were because you were just laying there. You didn't have the energy to do any fishing. You had a wet towel on your forehead. Your mom was trying to take care of you. They left early to get you to a hospital.
Yes.
Okay. And you thought they said she's dying?
Well,
and you're like, I'm ready.
It sounded to me from what I heard, and I was really out of it. Like I didn't go into a coma, but they couldn't believe I didn't. And it was, I think they probably said, we think she has diabetes, but I was still in the emergency room, but they probably said,
does it go from there? You are now diabetic. They tell you, do they give you a meal plan? Do they give you insulin? How does the insulin work back then?
Well, there were no insulin pumps back then, so it was insulin and syringes. And I have to tell you, just the way my mom reacted, it made it very, very easy for me. Thank goodness, because she just never. I didn't see her cry. She never was like, poor you, poor me, poor us. It was just like, we got this. This is what we have, and this is what we're going to do. Never did she ever, feel sorry or cry. And it was a lot of work for her, I know, because it was a lot of work for me. And it was me. So can you imagine having to do all that for your child?
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful that she handled things the way she did, because it made everything so much easier for me.
Right.
In life. And so when I was in the hospital at 10 years old, they brought me this little kit, and I had syringes and saline solution and oranges, and I could practice on the orange. And I honestly thought that was very cool. I thought, nobody else gets to do this.
Yeah, that's not, most people would see it. I'd be like, oh my God, syringes, I got to give myself a shot. Could you imagine Shay? Our daughter is deathly afraid of needles.
And it's so crazy.
she's got a needle phobia. I don't know the right word for that, but I'm sure there is one.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's really afraid. She's gotten better, but she's really was really afraid at 10 years old. So I mean, you're just a different person to be able to handle it like you did.
I thought it was very interesting. And I didn't mind the injections. We didn't do the finger poking yet. They would come in like God, every hour or two and draw blood, and you get to the point where your veins collapse, you can't find veins. And I had IVs, and those would hurt because they were always in some sort of a
Bad area.
yeah, and I think they were made of barbed wire back then.
But once you're home, what do you do for testing? You don't go to the hospital every day
Urine
and draw
testing.
blood.
It was urine testing.
And the urine testing can't be very accurate. Your urine could be from hours ago.
Yep. That's a big deal. And so,
You just did the best you could.
I always thought it should be 0. I felt, oh, it needs to be 0, but they kept telling me no, because if you don't have any, we don't know where you are. If you have a trace amount or a very small amount, we can kind of see that that collection has a small amount.
Of
So
sugar.
you're spilling less. Yes. So you're spilling less. And in general, we have a picture at least. Not long, I don't know if it was a year after I was diagnosed or less than a year, but I don't think it was more than a year when they had we got
Blood
our
test.
first home blood glucose monitoring.
And how was it for you at school? I know. Well, actually, tell me how does a low blood sugar feel?
Sugars several years ago,
Uh-huh.
but I know now. Usually, you guys would know before I knew, because there's a lot of mental confusion. Like if we were talking
Right.
and you're
So there's mental confusion.
Yeah.
And a lethargic feeling?
You feel lethargic, tired. Sometimes I thought I was just tired, and that's extremely dangerous because I'm like, I don't feel low.
I'm just tired.
Yeah, I'm just tired. I'm just going to lay down for a minute.
What I meant was back in the day, when you were 10 years old in school.
I didn't have a lot of low blood sugars.
You didn't have a lot of
I didn't have a lot of low blood sugars. In fact, I never required medical intervention.
Kid.
Okay, one way, and diabetics know this feeling. It's not exactly accurate, but it almost feels like a flu when you have the flu, where your body aches. And I always felt like there was this weird feeling in my veins, and maybe it's because I already knew it was a high blood sugar in my veins or whatever.
Okay.
But muscles and you get very, dehydrated, especially depending on how long it lasts. But
okay, so then you would take insulin. You take a shot.
Well, do a blood test and then take a shot. And nowadays it takes 5 seconds to do a blood test, 1 drop, and boom, it's done. But back when we got the first one, it was like 5 minutes. It's like apply a drop, and they didn't have the blood letters, the little Lancet thingies.
So what'd you do?
Well, okay, every single time you open up this little thing, and it was like a razor blade. It was like metal, and it had a spear at the end, and my mom would have to poke my finger with it. And sometimes it was pretty painful, sometimes it wasn't so bad, but for her to be able to do that to me, it was crazy. I couldn't do it myself, not because I was afraid, but I just that coordination thing.
So going through school, you get a little older, junior high school, was it difficult to pay attention when you had these high blood sugars or low?
I didn't realize until years later.
I thought you said you used to have
yeah, but icing. Here's the thing is what I would do if I had low blood sugar, I'd go to the office, and they would give me, they'd have frosting in the fridge. So I'd go sit in the teacher's lounge and eat frosting until my blood sugar came up. And then, I knew it, but it wasn't until later that I realized, you know what? That's why I didn't do so well in history and math, because they were always at that time right before lunch that I would have a low blood sugar. And I missed a lot of those classes. And I think knowing, what I've learned along the way, I would have done something differently.
Right.
I also was never told until I was about 18 years old how to take a bolus or extra insulin for high blood sugar or anything. It was like, here's your diet plan. Follow the diet plan, test your blood sugar. If your blood sugar is high, run around the house or run around the block. I did a lot of running around that house. And then for low blood sugar, you just treat it. And I actually figured out the thing because I got this awesome book. It was called the glucograph method. I found at a bookstore. And I got that book and I learned so much. That is what was a life changer for me. Things made sense.
How old were you at that time?
I had to have been 17.
Still high school.
Yeah, 17, 18. And I mean, maybe even 19, but around that age.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. And I learned about charting and graphing. And I took a really keen interest in nutrition. So that's how I went to college for nutrition. And anatomy and kinesiology was all so interesting how they work together. But this book told me about bolusing and how you do the testing and how you eat. I did a lot of fasting because you got to fast and to see how things affect. And it was so interesting. And I got myself super dialed in.
Right.
Yeah.
You hadn't had any adverse effects from the diabetes at that point. Your kidneys were fine. You were just taking this insulin and watching your diet and running around and having lows and highs, but it took some time before you started feeling adverse effects.
I've often said that when I was younger, until I was maybe 21, I thought of diabetes as a pesky little brother. It's like, get out, but it wasn't a big deal. It was not a big deal to me. And I could do everything I wanted. I was active. I wasn't stopped by doing things that I really realized.
You were a cheerleader in high school and college.
I ran track and cross country. And so I was super active and I rode horses all day long. I'd be gone all day long. And life was good. From the day
shots a day.
From the day I was diagnosed, pretty much. I was told about the complications of diabetes, and so I knew, and I knew it could happen. I knew it would likely happen if I was going to live a long life, which I hope to. And and then I remembered there was always this ad in the newspaper. It was this full page ad that showed a human body, and it showed all the things they were like these smudged out marks on all the different areas. So there was the kidney, there were feet, there was heart, there were all these things that are complications from diabetes. And there was one that was on the brain, and I could never figure out what that was supposed to be. But now I know. That's low blood sugar on the brain. Too many low blood sugars on the brain.
Which they really haven't done too many studies on the long-lasting effect of those low blood sugars, have they?
I remember asking
or that you know of.
I remember asking my diabetes educator, who was amazing and wonderful and awesome. I said, and I was probably 22, and I asked her, have there been any studies done, or have you heard of, or do your other patients talk about having issues thinking? And at that time, I'm trying to remember if it was just in general or at times, or I think it was more of a long-lasting effect, because I told her I'm not as sharp as I used to be. And my blood sugar was under super strict control. I mean, it was amazing. And she said she hadn't heard of that. And I was super surprised, because I would have thought some other patients would have mentioned it.
Yeah.
So I still don't really know what to do with that. Although I think that a lot of low blood sugars has to have some effect on the brain, because that's what the brain uses for energy.
For energy and growth. So what about your first complications? What was the first thing that bummed you out because it wasn't working right, besides the low blood sugars?
Well, what happened was I would do my lab work every 3 months. Maybe at that point it was 6 months, probably 6 months. And I was due for my diabetic retinal eye exam. And okay, great, make the appointment. But my ophthalmologist was the top guy. And he had surgery. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. My last one was perfectly clear 6 months ago.
Right.
Yeah, take care of that person that needs surgery. And then the next one 6 months later, another situation where he couldn't do it. So it was about a year and a half past my normal date, which I didn't think there was any problem. And it went from nothing in a year and a half to be very proliferated, the diabetic retinopathy. And that is when because they're very small vessels, which is affected so much by diabetes, which are in the eyes.
Fingertips and
your body thinks it's doing something great, and it starts growing all these extra blood vessels to get more blood to the eyes. But they're very weak. They're not good vessels, and they break and they bleed. Yeah. So like immediately that day they did laser surgery.
They break and they bleed. What does that do? You get blood just circulating inside your eye.
Yeah.
And that gets in the way of your vision. So you can't see through the blood.
I know, it's really, if you don't know the eye, which I didn't really know about the eye. I thought it was a big old ball of jelly, but it does bleed out into there, and it floats around. So eventually at one point I was totally blind from that.
I remember, so then you go into laser surgery.
Yes. And I went from completely fine, healthy, normal, to a year and a half later, because of all the waiting, my eyes were affected, and I did laser surgery, which I always
burn the vessels so that they don't bleed out.
Oh, and it's a cold laser. That's why that lady in those little brochures is smiling so happily. No, it hurts. It's so bad. It hurts so bad. And then they have a way that you can numb it. I mean, well, they take a needle, they put it under. It doesn't go into your eye, but it goes above the bone, the orbital bone, and it goes to the optic nerve, and they give you an injection of probably lidocaine or whatever it is. But that didn't help. It didn't help at all. And that just made it worse because I had a lot of swelling afterward. And so that was dark times. No pun intended.
But they basically were trying to burn the blood vessels so that they wouldn't continue to bleed, so that you could save whatever vision you had left. Yes. Those blood vessels start around the outside
and work their way in.
So you end up with no peripheral vision, correct?
I can't tell you that is from the
laser.
That's from the laser.
Right.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the vessels. That when they do the laser treatment, they go around the outside. And then I do remember a lot's coming back to me, but I remember the doctor would do like all over the grid. He says, we're just going to touch here and here and here and here. And what these things would do, because it's on the retina, it would basically glue the retina down to help me from keep me from having a detached retina, which is bad. You don't need that on top of everything else.
No, that's
which I never had. I never had it in my good eye.
Well, so this caused you to have, in the beginning, no vision because you're blinded by the blood.
Yes.
But eventually, when things cleared up, you had peripheral vision is gone. You have only central vision. And so you were told to maybe prepare yourself for a life of being legally blind.
Well, I asked my doctor, well, what does this mean? What is my prognosis? I mean, I need to know what I need to think forward to doing. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you probably won't lose all your vision. You'll probably be able to see dark and light.
Okay.
And
so where'd you do it? Is that where you started with the Braille Institute?
After I did before. As soon as I started going through things, my mom was on top of it. She looked into everything. And we didn't have the internet back then. But she found the Braille Institute, and we started going there. She would take me there. And that was helpful, but it wasn't quite,
Well, yeah, I do know because I'm also visually impaired. I'm legally blind too. And my vision is the exact opposite. I have no central vision. I only have peripheral. So we see exactly opposite from one another. Mm-hmm. So whereas like I can run in that fall because I can see everything just blurry. Everything's very blurry, and I have no vision in the center. She can't run. She has to walk very gingerly because she can't see her feet and what's down on the floor, so she could trip over a curb. For example, when we go to the grocery store, we're a good couple because I can see the poles, I can see the displays on the floor, and I walk her around. And then she'll read to me the labels because I can't see the details on the labels because I have blurry vision, not having central. So, so I know about the Braille Institute because when I started losing my vision at 21.
It was wonderful and helpful, but it wasn't quite as 21 or 22 years old. At the time, it wasn't exactly what I needed.
Yeah, or myself. I went there also. That's where I first went to Braille Institute. I left just before Suzanne started.
And in fact, what's so weird is I went there. I didn't know you. I hadn't met you, knew nothing about you, but I was in this one group and they're like, "Hey, where's Max?" And somebody goes, "Oh, he died." I'm like, "Oh man," because people are always passing away over there. It was really sad. But they're like, "He passed, he died." And like, I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so sad."
Yeah.
And then when I met you, I'm like, "You're alive." But I think there was another Max. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I'm sure. But so yeah, I mean, the problem with the Braille Institute is kind of what she what she alluded to is it's mostly for older people to lose their eyesight and go in there and learn some life skills to deal with, and also to get out of the house and meet other blind people and talk about their weekend and their grandchildren and whatnot. We needed some more comprehensive learning. And so,
well, I wanted to say real quick, you say that I have to walk real gingerly, mostly in closer up situations, because I can go running, but of course not on some crazy hiking trail. But when we're home, I can run. I can see the street, and
yes,
yeah. So,
but unfamiliar places too.
right.
It depends on what you're doing, of course.
I run over a lot of those signs that say "Caution, wet floor." I just knock them down, and they're so loud.
Because you don't expect them to be there, but like on the loop, it's a trail, and you pretty much know what's there, and you look ahead, and so you plan for what's coming. But no, I for sure.
Okay, I just didn't want people to think I'm all feeble and
yeah, no, that's a good explanation. You do go, yeah, they're gonna see you pictures of you on Facebook and you're running. It's like, what? I thought you could run. But so there you are. You're legally blind. You almost totally blind when I first met you.
Yeah, I couldn't even see you because I had one eye was totally blind and I never got that vision back. And the other, I had so much bleeding. There was like this little clear thing, but it would slosh around, so I'd have to kind of catch you in it.
So my rehab counselor told me that I should go to a place called the Foundation for the Junior Blind. It's a vocational independence program that they had there. It wasn't just for the junior blind. And it was like a dorm type setting. You go there, you live there during the week, you come home on the weekends, and they teach you a little more detailed living, vocational independence and living skills than the Braille Institute. A lot more.
I went there thinking I was going to be blind pretty soon because I already was, and sure, that blood could have cleared, or my good eye could have gone like the other one.
Right. So when I walked in, I saw Suzi, and she was standing there in the hallway, and they told me there was going to be one other girl starting at the same time as I was, so I figured it was her, and said hi, and that's where we met. We met at the Foundation for the Junior Blind Vocational Independence Program for Adults, and we were there how long? A week or two?
1 week, 5 days, because it was just during the week. We'd go home on weekends.
So the first week was an evaluation week where they test us. They did an IQ test. They did physicals.
We went that week. We learned, because I was like, I don't care what he knows about me. I didn't really want you to know my weight because I hadn't been able to, because of the bleeding in the eyes, I couldn't do any exercise for several months before I met you. And I was probably I was heavier than when I had Gavin. And so, but it's like, but we learned a lot about each other, and we spent a lot of time together.
We spent all day together.
From the start, you and me, we were like peas and carrots.
From breakfast to dinner, yeah, we were together.
And I was vegetarian, and Max wasn't, so he got all my meat, and I got all his vegetables at meals.
Yep. And so that first week we were totally together, and then we came home, and we realized that I lived in Chino and she lived in Corona, which was about 15, 20 minutes away from each other.
Back then.
Yeah. And it was just seemed really convenient. So we started talking on the phone in between. It was like it was a few months later that we went back, right?
Yeah.
2 months?
2 to 5 months. And I think you started before me.
Yeah, I think I started a month before you.
Yeah.
And so I left a month before you. And it was interesting. She had a cane and she was walking around with a cane still because she was almost totally blind. And we would go to these classes to
And the
learn how
thing,
to iron and
yeah,
cook.
ironing and things that, like how to fill a glass of water and how to boil and cook and how to
Label things.
and so many skills that, I mean, how to, I had like 3 pair of flats and they were 3 different colors, and that one was a light color, but one was navy blue and one was black. And there were so many times I had one navy blue and one black shoe on because I could not tell the color difference apart.
Yeah. And I didn't know how to type. I never took typing in high school. And she was a secretary for her dad, so she typed like a whiz. And so when we were doing that evaluation week,
Office manager,
oh
I
yeah,
like to call it.
and so when we were there for that week and they were doing our evaluations, they put me in typing and they put her directly to computers. And so I was like, oh, I want to be in her class. So I would take that typewriter home after school. I'd go pick up the typewriter from the typing class and I'd take it to my dorm room and I'd practice for a few hours. And then I'd practice for a few hours after dinner. And I learned how to type in 2 weeks, 26 words a minute in 2 weeks.
Time.
Yeah. So that I could be in your class. And
I didn't know that.
Right. I wasn't letting on that I was that interested. And then
we were very cool.
We had to learn Braille. And it was very difficult. Braille was a trip.
Especially for a diabetic with fingers hardened by blood testing.
Yeah. I didn't have that problem, but it's still difficult to feel letters that you normally just look at them and you know them. I remember the first time I was trying to read a word. It was a lengthy word. And I'd feel the C, then feel the A, then feel the B. When I got to the last letter, I forgot what the first letter was. So I tried and tried and tried. And then finally I said, you know what, forget this. I read the first letter and I wrote down a C. Read the second letter, wrote down an A. At the end of the word, I read cabbage and said, oh no, it took me 20 minutes to read cabbage. Well, I could just look at cabbage and read cabbage.
Yeah.
But I tried really hard in Braille because I wanted to impress Suzi. She was doing really well on it. And I was like, I got to do better. So I learned Braille just to impress you because I really never had an interest in it. My vision was to stay pretty stable until my later years. There's a good chance I could lose it all. But it's usually in your later years. And but I learned it just so I can get closer to you.
Thank you.
And anyways, we were in the class and we would leave and we'd go to the Crenshaw Mall. She was crazy.
Oh, and this was during the Rodney King.
The verdict for the officers.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, the verdict for the officers from the Rodney King beating. So we were at Crenshaw and Saboba. Saboba?
No, I can't think of the name of it right now though, because you said Saboba.
Yeah, but anyways, we're in a not the best area, and it
was beautiful though.
Yeah,
the neighborhood was beautiful.
Our neighborhood was, but it was surrounded by some bad parts.
Yeah, somebody was murdered out front, and another person out back of our campus.
Yeah, and we she would want to go out on excursions. I'd be like, well, no, we need to stay here where it's safe. And she's like, I'm going. If you're not, I'm going without you. I'm like, oh, I can't let her go alone.
I said that?
Yeah.
That's not like me. Well, maybe it was like me.
Yeah, it is. And so she would say, I'm leaving at this time. You're coming or not? So I would go. And I couldn't believe we were there. We would walk up half a mile or more and then get on a bus and go to the mall and get cappuccinos and come back. And
everybody was always nice to us. Nobody was ever threatening that we saw.
Yeah.
Of course, we were both blind.
Yeah, that's true. What did we see? Things are probably
people are trying to stick us up. We just walked by.
Very possible. But yeah, so in the 6 months, was it that we stayed in that school?
Mm-hmm.
In those 6 months, we got to liking each other and dating, and then I asked her to marry me about a month before or a few weeks before I left, and she was going to stay for a month longer than me. But we're at the Tyler Mall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting coffee, and I said, "Hey, you want to go look at wedding rings?"
Because it's right across the
right,
coffee place was here, and then
said, "Hey, you want to go get wedding rings? You want to look at wedding rings?" And you said, "Yeah." And we went over. We're looking at wedding rings. And I like this one, and she found one she liked. And we applied for credit. We're two blind kids on disability, and we got credit to buy gold and diamonds. Granted, they weren't expensive. I think how much was your ring?
Beautiful. No, I want to say that my two were under $2,000. I mean, it seems like 1,200.
I think it was 1,200. Yeah, and mine was like 300.
And that's not cheap, but it's not.
It's not what people pay these days, and not even back then. I mean, they were probably the lower end rings, but we got it on credit. Disabled on disability checks.
Well, living the thing is, I worked a lot and I had money. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't like, oh, I'm destitute and these people are giving me diamonds and gold. I'm just saying. I worked a long time and I had money and no,
but we bought them on credit, remember? Yeah, that's on. I
had great credit back then.
So, hey, Gavin, is there any way to pause this?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I can stop it and make a second. Start a new live stream.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.